to Thinking Real Estate.
So you were just
The
saying.
Schlecke family.
Well, Pat Birch was supposed to be here, is what you were saying.
Patrick Birch, yes.
Yes.
Our city
correct.
manager,
A
but
very
something
mysterious city manager.
came up and he couldn't make it. I
I don't think he wanted to talk to me.
We call him
Oh.
elusive. He's
Are
he's
you-
elusive.
Elusive.
why would he
Elusive.
want to talk to you? Are
I
you?
don't know. I
I
called
mean,
him.
who wouldn't want to talk to you? You're famous. You're kind.
No,
Because he would
You're
cross-examine
good looking.
him.
I called his office. And
You're good at what you do. I mean, I can't think
Well,
of a
thank
single
you.
bad thing about you. Why wouldn't somebody want to talk to you?
Jeez, I feel humbled.
And honored. Flattered.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So,
I'm embarrassed.
well, don't be embarrassed.
Well, you're on the radio. Nobody can tell.
That's true.
Although Jackie could swing the camera your way.
Don't, Jackie.
So I'm here in lieu of Pat Birch because
Okay.
I was supposed to be in Ottawa County Circuit Court on a case and it got adjourned till November 14. So I told Laura if Patrick wasn't able to do it, I would show up. So here I are.
Okay.
Okay. And we were talking about contractors last week, but I suggested to Laura, I've got a big case going on in Lansing involving appraisers. And I thought that it might be an apt topic to talk about this morning, and the different kinds of appraisals, what people, the misconceptions people have about appraisers and appraisals, including my wife, who's a realtor, and she has
My
to
father
deal-
was an appraiser.
Are you an appraiser?
I started
Laura?
well, you know, when the appraisal licensing came about, I should have gotten my appraisal license because all you had to do is apply. Now it's almost impossible, it seems, to get an appraisal license.
No, you had to do more than apply. You had to
When it first
meet the
came out.
requirements.
Well, you had to meet requirements,
The experience
but the-
requirements.
And I had all
there's an
that.
exam.
I had all that.
You take an exam.
it was a lot
right?
easier.
Yeah, but you also have educational requirements, and then you have ongoing continuing ed requirements as well.
And I had all that. I mean, I could have easily gotten my license and that, but of course, appraising isn't my first love. So.
The history is that in order to appraise property before 1991, I think when the new law took effect, all you had to possess was a real estate license, real estate salesperson's license or real estate broker's license, and you were entitled to appraise property. As a result of the S&L crisis in the late 1980s, what happened was the federal government imposed requirements on states where if the state didn't adopt a statutory scheme and a regulatory scheme over appraisers, that those appraisers, that those states, that banks in those states would be unable to write mortgage loans, federally insured or federally related mortgage loans in those states. So every state, including Michigan, adopted a set of statutory and administrative regulations to govern appraisers. It's
Because of
because of the S&L crisis and because the
crooked appraising?
right part of the S&L crisis, part of the blame of the S&L crisis lay not only with who is that
S&L stands for?
savings and loan, federal savings and loan. And remember the guy in Texas who was the poster boy for the S&L crisis? His name escapes me at the moment.
Yeah.
But at any rate, so we adopted the appraisal legislation. It's Article 26 in the Occupational Code, and appraisers have
In
to
case
be
somebody wants
licensed.
to look it up.
And there are different classifications of appraisers, the highest level being a general, what is it, general certified appraiser is the highest level, and then there's general residential appraiser, and there's one other category that escapes me at the moment. And so you have to meet certain experience requirements in order to move up the ladder in terms of being an appraiser.
And I think there are fewer and fewer appraisers because of the amount of the requirements involved.
Well, what happened in addition...
You have to work for someone too. I mean, it isn't
Right.
like it used to be I could have my broker's license and do appraisals and I didn't have to work for anybody. I could just do them. But in order to get that experience, you have to work for someone, and then finding someone who's willing to take you under their wing is
Yeah, that's correct.
it's
And
challenging.
Well, and the experience requirement is very, very strict. I mean, it's not just, 5 or 10 commercial appraisals. I forget what the number is, but
So you can't just be an appraiser.
No.
Nope. You can apply
You have to
for
be
and
hired
become
by
a
an appraiser?
general residential appraiser, and to get the experience to get licensed, you're going to have to work for an appraiser initially. And then to get to the highest level, the general certified appraiser requires a great deal of experience where you have to work under another appraiser. Yeah.
And I haven't talked to appraisers in a long time, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and the limb could break. that could fall.
No.
But I think that our appraisers are getting older and starting to retire. I think you're gonna have
Shortage?
a huge, I mean, it's hard to find some appraisers now, but I think it's gonna become a huge problem. in
Well,
the
I think
future.
a major problem arose as a result of, and I think it was Dodd-Frank, the act, that precipitated a whole bunch of changes in the financial and the mortgage industry and the banking industry. And that included the creation of what are known as AMCs, appraisal management companies. So that now when an application is made for a mortgage to a particular lender, the lender goes to the AMC, the appraisal management company, to order an appraisal, and it's the AMC who actually hires the appraiser. That's the way most appraisals are handled these days. And they do it in bulk so that they're trying to create what I'll call a discounted market for appraisals and for appraisers. So the amount that appraisers get paid for appraisals today is less than, if you compare dollars and inflation, is less than what they were paid 10 and 15 years ago for the same appraisal. And so it's become more competitive, more difficult, and not as profitable to be at least a
appraiser.
residential appraiser.
Although you would
Commercial
think with the
appraisals are
shortage,
different.
it would be different, right? Because the demand, I mean, if I were an appraiser, I would, if they want my work, I'd charge them more.
Yeah, but the residential appraisers that I know, I mean, they are swamped with work right now.
Right,
But
so
that's
why would they
because
charge
they're
more?
they can't do it because they're contracted with an AMC, and the AMC is gonna pay, let's say, $225 for the appraisal. And you gotta remember, there are really what I'll call three categories of appraisal. There's what's called a desktop appraisal, where the appraiser never visits the property, never does a physical inspection, inside or out. Desktop is done simply from information that is available through the public record. And that's the least reliable appraisal, but those are done. Desktop appraisals are in fact done from time to time for various reasons. Most mortgagees, banks and lenders require the next level, which is a drive-by. And the reason they require the drive-by and why they don't require an interior inspection is because the purpose of that appraisal is different than the purpose of an appraisal done for an owner. An owner really wants to know, well, what's my property worth? The lender doesn't really care what the actual value is. What the lender cares about is that there's sufficient value to be able to support the loan if it goes into default. And it's even a different purpose if it's a home equity loan for which the appraisal is being done versus a first mortgage loan. Because a home equity loan is subordinate to the first mortgage. The ability to levy or to foreclose on that second mortgage on a home equity loan is much more tenuous than a first mortgage. So my point here is you have different levels of appraisals, you have different types of appraisals, the purposes for the appraisals are different. And so when you often see this where an owner gets really PO'd because they're given a copy of an appraisal that was done for a lender. I'll give you an example. I've got a case going on right now where the owner is also an appraiser who's also a realtor, and he lists his property for $156,250. The appraisal comes in $82,000. About half of what
Really?
this guy has. He actually had it listed. This is the third listing. It was listed at 166 or something.
So maybe it's
originally.
overpriced, but.
Well, yeah, that's no doubt. But my point here is that owners who think their property is worth so much, they see an appraisal that's done for bank or lending purposes, and they get really ticked off because, well, the appraiser missed that, the appraiser missed this, the appraiser did that. In the case I'm talking about, the lender wrote the loan anyway, despite the fact that the owner was griping about the fact that there were some technical errors in the appraisal
You must have
itself.
held it in-house. Although in-house with the bank, you can ask
This one was
Mr.
peddled
Jors on Thursday.
This one was peddled in the
Is it
market.
Thursday that he does his show? Ask him if they have the same requirements on holding loans in-house
So
as they do selling to the secondary market.
I mean, you must, and Jackie must, and everybody who's a realtor must encounter the same problem when the appraisal comes back. Usually what happens, though, is the griping is done by the owner because the appraisal comes back at a value which doesn't support the ability to purchase the property. In other words, there's an insufficient value so that the loan-to-equity ratio doesn't match
Well,
what
when
the
we list a
purchaser's
house,
able
I
to
do
do.
an in-depth market analysis similar to an appraisal. Right, Jackie? Yeah, and so I have I add one step, and I have a really good idea whether or not it's worth I won't put it on the market if I don't think it's worth what I've got it on the market
What
for.
difference is that than an appraisal?
Mine?
Your market
I'm not licensed.
analysis. So it's really the
But
same thing.
I can guarantee there's no other realtor out there that does the same market analysis that I do. Because it's similar to an appraisal, because of my background. I mean, my dad was an appraiser, so that's where I grew up with, the appraisal side of
When
it.
we adopted the appraisal law, the change was made, it was incorporated into Article 26 governing appraisers, and then a change was made to Article 25, so that we now have a document entitled a comparative market analysis, a CMA. And a real estate broker licensed under Article 25, who's not an appraiser, licensed under Article 26, can sign off on a CMA, but the CMA must clearly state on the cover page that this is a comparative market analysis and is not an appraisal. And it can be signed off only by a broker. A real estate salesperson may not do it. You must be a broker to do a CMA, if you're going to charge for it. Now, a real estate licensee, a salesperson or a broker, can do a CMA for purposes of listing for a seller, or for determining a value if they're representative of the buyer.
But
They
that
can
won't
do
do
it.
you any good at the bank, right?
It won't do you a damn bit of good at the bank. Doesn't do you any good. What this is for purposes of listing, if it's for the seller, and for the purpose of negotiating a purchase price if you're representing the buyer. And the broker and salesperson may not charge for that comparative market analysis. It must be done in connection with the listing or establishment of a price for listing or for the buyer. There's specific limitations here for a CMA. The only time it can be charged for by a non-appraiser is if it's done by a broker and clearly is stated on the face of it that it is not an appraisal.
Well, who's paying? The owner?
Yeah, occasionally an owner will want to know what the value is, maybe for assessment purposes, although the law clearly states that a non-appraiser cannot testify, cannot be used as proof of value in a tribunal such as the Michigan Tax Tribunal or a court.
But they could take it
or
to their
anything else.
local
But why,
assessor.
They can
why
take it
would
to
you
local assessor.
why would you pay for a CMA and not
An appraisal?
have an appraisal?
Because a CMA is going to be much less expensive than a full-blown
Oh,
appraisal. And
okay.
in other words, if I'm doing an appraisal for purposes of contesting my assessment, I'm going to the tax tribunal, or for purposes of eminent domain, the city's condemning my property, I'm going to get a full-blown appraisal. I'm not going to do a drive-by, I'm not going to do a desktop, I need a full-blown appraisal. And I'm not going to be paying the same that a bank is paying, the $225 for a drive-by appraisal on a mortgage. I'm going to be paying a substantially greater sum of money for that full-blown appraisal. Because it's interior and exterior, it's not a drive-by.
Banks do
It's-
drive-bys?
All the time, yeah.
I have to push back on that. I think residential sales, they do interior.
That may be your experience, but a
Yeah.
lot of them will do a drive-by, depending
They can't
upon.
hear what I'm
Could they
saying.
hear it, Jackie?
No, they can't hear Jackie.
Come here, Jackie, and say it.
What,
Say it.
what
Come here.
Jackie
No,
says
no,
is,
no.
no, her experience is that they're doing more than a drive-by, and I think you're right. For first mortgage lending, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the rest, they are. If it's not Fannie
If
Mae,
it's
if it's
a
not
home
Freddie
equity,
Mac,
maybe they'll do a drive-by. If it's for foreclosure, the bank will do a drive-by just to get an idea. They'll pay a realtor. I've had the calls. Will you do a drive-by? We'll pay $80. Of course, I say no.
for
But there are
purposes of
realtors
doing a
just to get an estimate of what it's worth. That's just
for
their
the bid
starting.
price at the foreclosure.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they use it for, but I don't deal with foreclosure stuff.
Yeah,
Period.
no, I think
I'll
Jackie's.
sell them, but I don't list them.
I think, and most of the stuff you guys are doing is going to be peddled to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, so I'm sure that those are not drive-by appraisals. I suspect the ones that I'm talking about are non-Fannie Mae, non-Freddie Mac, where the loan-to-value ratio is not going to be 90% or 95%, because they're the lender's not as concerned about, and it certainly could be a home equity loan too. But I just want to relate the three different types of appraisals: desktop, drive-by, and then full-blown appraisal.
Drive-by sounds dangerous.
Yeah.
Actually, it's interesting you say that, because depending upon the road, they actually pull into the driveway, and then the appraisal is based upon what they physically
I
observe.
suspect they have to take a picture.
Yeah, they do take pictures. Yeah, from the road. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Or their
exactly right.
car. If it's cold out, I've seen them at the
From the
window.
car, yeah.
the pictures.
Yeah, but one of the interesting problems and aspects of it is that appraisers are governed by what's called USPAP, the Uniform Standards of Appraisal Practice, promulgated by the Appraisal Foundation. And USPAP, it's interesting, when you read the standards, it's as if there's only one kind of appraisal and that's it. But when you apply USPAP, when you apply the standards of use, Pat, you have to differentiate between desktop, drive-by, and full-blown appraisals.
I
get
don't get
confused.
these drive-bys. I just don't.
Yeah, because a
Well,
lender,
they used
a
to be
lot of
more
lenders,
prevalent before
You're not gonna have a clue of
2006
what's
happened.
inside this house.
but most lender, I shouldn't say, but the lender in many circumstances doesn't care what's on the inside of the house.
Really?
Yeah, because they're looking, first of all, the lender isn't in the business of owning homes.
Might be gutted.
Well, but yeah, but it
Well,
also
it could be.
well, if it's occupied, it's not going to be gutted. But to be honest with you, if I'm the lender and I loan you $100,000 on a house today, that doesn't mean tomorrow you're not going to destroy the inside of it, right?
But-
So the value is going to be more on the structural,
Yeah, but you,
on the
by then
integrity
you
of the
signed off
structure.
on it.
More importantly, when I sign a mortgage note, the lender's looking to me to pay the note. They really don't want to have to foreclose. So they're looking at my credit worthiness first and foremost.
Right.
The collateral.
I'm looking
the-
at your credit worthiness first and foremost.
Well, I thought you were looking at my appearance. first
No,
and foremost.
I've given it
So,
back.
so
Credit
the
scores
second, the
vary for
collateral,
credit
the
score.
house or the property is second to the principal obligation to pay on the note. Depending upon what the loan to value ratio is, the lender, I mean, it's like a mortgage survey. The mortgage survey, it doesn't survey boundaries, it simply demonstrates that all of the improvements lie within the boundaries. Because the lender doesn't care that the boundaries are exactly where they are, they simply care that the improvements are within it. Same thing is true if the loan to equity value is less, or if it's a second mortgage, and it's home equity mortgage, for example, the lender's concern about the value of the collateral is less, and the appraiser takes a more conservative view, because they don't, since they can't verify what's inside.
Well,
You
and when I
can't-
do a market analysis, I haven't seen all the houses that I've compared that house to establish the value. So we talk about what the current condition of the main houses that we're valuing. And a lot of people say, well, I've got $20,000 in landscaping. That doesn't necessarily add to the value, it just makes your home sell faster and appeal. You might get the higher end of the value range. An appraisal is gonna come up with a specific number, where a realtor's gonna come up with a range, so.
Well, Laura's point is well taken. Fannie Mae requires a minimum of 3 comps. And
Within
the-
6 months,
Yeah, but, and
unless
the,
it's a unique type of home.
and the appraiser doesn't see the inside of those homes. The appraiser can't go see the inside.
Right,
of
but
those
I will
homes.
say that I have often, and I'm sure other realtors have too, gotten calls from appraisers, and they've asked specific questions about whether it's the terms of the sale or the condition of the home. In fact, I wrote an offer on a house recently and I compared, when I represent a buyer, I do a market analysis on what they're buying, and I compared it to a home that sold and there were no pictures of the interior of the home on the MLS, so I called the realtor to find out what the condition of the house was on the inside.
Yeah, but the uniform standards, USPAP says that a realtor should look at anything which the owner says, or the listing agreement says, or the listing agent says, should be taken with a grain of salt.
Well,
Because
sure.
it is typically puffed, it is typically exaggerated, and so when it boils down to the difference between what is in the listing or what the owner says, an interview with the owner, compared to what is observed and observable by the appraiser is to rely upon what he
So
or
if I
she
say a
actually
house is
sees.
dated, am I puffing it?
What do you mean? No, that's the
Okay.
opposite. If you say it's
Right,
dated,
okay,
that's
so-
the opposite. Puffing means making it
I know
appear
what
or
puffing means.
sound better than it
Okay,
actually
so
is.
that was good, thank
All right.
you. A couple of things, we've got so there is, I heard on your show today
Yeah.
that there is a trick or treat over in Kiwanis Park.
Mhm.
I've got a nice listing over there at 601 Seymour.
Oh.
It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, just under 1,000 square feet, $29,900, very affordable. Another affordable one that I have is 1034 First Street, $29,900. That's a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, 1,400 square foot brick, 2-story home. And then of course on the in the middle range price, I've got 6581 Laurie Drive, Western Schools, 4 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, almost 2,200 square feet, 164,900. And then Burning Tree, nice Northwest School District home at 214,900, 6306 Burning Tree, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, almost 3,500 square feet of finished, both floors. and that has an extra garage. And then sitting on the Raisin River is 387 South Mill Street, 249.9. A really nice 3-bedroom, 3-bath, almost 3,000 square foot home. Couple other things. Today's Halloween.
No.
It is.
I want to do one shout out before you
Well,
quit.
no,
though.
you're gonna have to wait because you talked all this radio show. And then Artitude is starting. Do you know what Artitude is?
What is that?
Artitude is our pop-up
Holiday
Our
marketplace.
holiday marketplace for artists.
Oh, good.
We're gonna have 26 artists, few in and out, and that's where the opening party reception is November 17th from 5 to 7. And then regular hours start November 18th. So you add that to our gallery, the Orange Peacock Gallery. You've got quite a bit of shopping you can do in right downtown Jackson.
Beautiful.
And we have a new peacock outside the gallery. Come and look at it. That artist is going to be doing a show next spring. So anyhow,
All right,
what would
Ken,
you like to say, dear?
I want to say one thing, okay, and that is an article on my mother appeared online. And Google Suzy, S-U-Z-Y, Farbman, F as in Frank, A-R, B as in boy, M-A-N. She's the author. And there's an article that appeared on Saturday online in her blog or whatever it's called, Suzy Farbman. My mother's name is
You could post it on your-
Lahti, L-A-H-T-I. Maybe we'll even post it to Thinking Real Estate. But it's a wonderful article on my mother, who is a physician, came from dirt poor Depression era in the Upper Peninsula. It's
Do you
a
know
wonderful
Jeff
article.
Lottie?
I don't know Jeff Lahti. Okay.
Do you know Christine Lottie? She's a movie star. She's
Well, I know
Bill's-
who she is, but
Yeah, it's
I
Bill's
don't
cousin.
know her.
But
You don't?
Lottie is a Finnish name, which is as common as the
Oh, is it
American
really?
name
Okay.
like Smith or Jones. Yeah, That's a
Used to
very
pitch
common
for the
name.
Cardinals, Jeff Lottie.
Didn't know that, but yeah, it's a very common Finnish name.
Hey, wait.
Call
who
this
won last
number.
night? Did the Cubs win?
Cubs won.
Yeah, 3-2.
Call.
780-3800. Happy Halloween.